Hey there and welcome. If you're getting started with trading, you've probably heard the term margin thrown around a lot. But here's a question. What actually happens when you have more than one trade open? That, my friends, is where used margin comes into play. And trust me, understanding this is a game changer. So let's break it all down.
So picture this. You've opened your first trade, things were looking good, and then you spot another great opportunity. So you jump on it and open a second trade, maybe even a third. But have you ever stopped to think about what's actually happening to the money in your account with each new position you add? It's a super important question and one every trader needs to know the answer to.
Okay, so before we can really dig into used margin, we need to take one quick step back and look at its foundation. You can't understand the total without first understanding the single building block, and that's something called required margin.
So what is required margin? Well, the easiest way to think about it is like a good faith deposit for a single trade. Whenever you open a new position, your broker takes a specific chunk of your cash and sets it aside. That money is essentially locked up. It's on hold for as long as that one trade is open.
Here's a great little analogy. Imagine that your required margin for one trade is like a single bag of money that gets put into margin jail. Now, it's still your money, of course, but you can't touch it, you can't use it to open any other trades because it's tied directly to that one position until you close it.
All right, so we get it. One trade, one chunk of money locked up. But we all know trading isn't usually about just one position, right? So let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. It's time for the main event. Used margin.
And here it is, the key difference. If required margin is for one trade, used margin is the total for all of your open trades combined. It's the grand total of all those individual deposits that are locked up across every single position you have running. Keeping a close eye on this number is absolutely vital for managing your account's health. And this image makes it crystal clear. If one trade puts one bag of your money in margin jail, then having multiple trades means you've got multiple bags all locked up at the same time. Your used margin is just the total value of all of those bags added together. Simple as that.
You know, theory is great and all, but I find it always clicks when you see it in action. So let's walk through a super simple example with two positions and calculate the used margin together.
All right, here's our setup. We're going to open two different trades, and both are for 10,000 units. Our first position is USD/JPY, and that one has a 4% margin requirement. The second is USD/CHF with a 3% requirement. Ready? Let's do the math.
First up, let's figure out the required margin for that USD/JPY position. The math is really simple. We just take the position size, which is $10,000, and multiply it by the 4% margin requirement. And boom, that gives us a required margin of $400 for this one trade.
Okay, trade number 2, the USD/CHF position. We do the exact same thing here. We take the $10,000 position size and multiply it by its 3% margin requirement, and that gives us a required margin of $300 for this second trade.
So, what's our total used margin for the entire account? Well, you probably guessed it. We just add those two individual required margins together. The $400 from our first trade plus the $300 from our second gives us a grand total used margin of $700. And this diagram just lays it all out beautifully. You can see the $400 block for the USD/JPY trade and the $300 block for the USD/CHF trade. You stick them together and they form your total used margin of $700. See? It really is that straightforward. All right, so let's bring it all home. What's the bottom line here? If you're going to remember just a few things from this explainer, what should they be? Let's recap.
Okay, let's lock this in. Required margin, that's for just one position. Used margin, that's for all of your open positions. And how do you find it? You just add up all your individual required margins. Simple addition. Now, why is this so critical? Because your used margin tells you exactly how much of your capital is tied up and can't be touched. If that number gets too big compared to your total account, you could be facing a margin call. So knowing this number isn't just nice, it's essential for keeping your account healthy.
And you know, this leaves us with a really fascinating question. We've figured out how much of our account is used, but what about everything else? What about the money that's left over? And how do your floating profits and losses fit into all this? Well, my friends, that's where the next piece of the puzzle comes in, a little something called equity.